it for the love, so now I'm doing what I want. For the love of the shit. Doing it for the love, so now I'm doing what I want. For the love of the shit. Hip hop and rap, yeah, that's where my heart's at.
And welcome everybody to the Fantasy Firebox, episode 35. I know it's more than that, but I stopped counting in the beginning, so we're just going to go with 35. I'm your host, Tony Jigsaw Cotillo. Joined tonight, I have a special guest. PGH John 36 will be out for a couple of weeks. He won't be with me, but filling in for him, I'm honored to have Mr. Jovan Alfrod from Draftkings staff writer. He does tremendous things. Me and him been going back and forth on Twitter with DFS lineups. He does a lot of prop bets. We see they got a good mix going. So, Jovan, thanks for so much at last minute notice for joining the Fantasy Firebox tonight.
Hey, it's not a problem. Yeah, when you reached out, it was, I think the Final Four was on, and that was the national championship game was on. That was a blowout. So I was like, yeah, might as well, come on to the show, talk some DFS, and because this is the time to do it. Baseball's back in action. NBA's in the second half of the season, so this is a great time to get to learn it and get to play it.
Hey, I'll tell you what, I've been going crazy. Like, I don't know if it's just me, but it's like every time I turn around, it's like, all right, now we got Masters. And then next thing you know, it's MLB. Then you got NBA. Then you got NFL free agency. And it's like my mind's about to explode anymore. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's how it is. It's like once we get past like that quiet point after the Super Bowl, then everything starts revving up with the March Madness. Then you said like the Masters. Then we're going to have the NBA playoffs, the NFL draft. And before you know the NBA draft, we're at the All-Star break for baseball. It's just,
it's our dream come true, though. I mean, this is our paradise, which is great about it because we live for this kind of stuff. And I know we've gone back and forth, so just so we're going to get into a lot of stuff. We're going to do a little NBA, a little Major League Baseball, talk a little NFL, talk about the Sam Darnold trade, the impacts. But first, I want to start off with, because we've been going back and forth, and we pick a lot of the same players, and then we try to blend them in as much as we can. And a lot of people, just in generalizations, they don't understand what we're doing with DFS. It's not traditional. There's a big difference between traditional fantasy and DFS, right? So we have our streamers, so to speak. I know I have guys that I kind of fall in love with on a normal basis. Like, I know he's 4,000, always going to be there. I can tell you right now, Derek Favors is one of my favorite 3,200 guys I fill in when I get to the lineup, right? I know he's going to give me like maybe 12, 13, right? So, right. But I want to start off with a stub, because what Lonzo Ball has been doing right now is nothing short of miraculous compared. I mean, this guy couldn't even hit a 18 tractor trailer last year, right? With a basketball. And he is hitting everything. Now, 43 fantasy points per game over the last 5. He's attempted 55 3-pointers and actually shooting 43%. So, well, my question is to you, number one, did you see this coming? And number two, you think he can continue this down the stretch? Because he's been really juicy lately.
I mean, when we last saw Lonzo before the season, everybody was kind of wondering, like, is that shot going to turn around? Is he, because he's going into a contract year as well, as a restricted free agent. If any time, this is the year for you to be that guy. And luckily, he's got a coach in Stan Van Gundy, which has let him be the guy. And it started because we all know Lonzo can pass. We all know Lonzo can get to the lane. But it started with the shooting. And once he became a competent 3-point shooter, I think that just opened up everything around him. Because like you said, with Lonzo, he's stuff. The thing with Lonzo, he's not like your Kyrie Irvings or your Jamal Murray's or your De'Aaron Fox, is a guy where they're going to give you 20 points, 20 regular points on a daily basis. No, this is a guy where he might give you 10 or 12, 15 points, but then you'll get like 6 assists, 5 rebounds. So you're stuff in the box score and stuff in the stat sheet. So I didn't see this happening, but I think it's been a good development because he's been that, great, nice play. And then on a given matchup, if he's going against a point guard that doesn't really play no defense, or a team that can play that up and down style that the New Orleans Pelicans favor, then you're in a very good sweet spot.
Yeah, you mentioned a great thing about the contract because we talk about that all the time, especially in football. When it's
Mhm.
that third year wide receiver, fifth year option. I mean, those boys are coming out the ball. They're like, yo, listen, I need to get papered up in the all season. So that's what he's all about. Which I'll tell you what, just 52, 52, 36, 40, and 48. I mean, that's his last 5 DraftKings DFS lineup. I mean, and he's only 7,700 right now, which he's in my lineup tonight because I'm like, there's no way that he should be under $8,000. I was absolutely shocked that he was there. And I'm like, I do a big 2 or a big 3 every night. And to me,
Mhm.
those guys are like 8,000 or more. And
Right.
I think he should be in that conversation. And so far he's not, but good for us for getting that value, right? That's all I got to say.
Yeah, no, it's a great value, especially when you look at the team that he's on with, Zion and Brandon Ingram. Those are what 8K guys and plus every
Yep.
night.
Yep.
And you're going to get points, and you might want to mess around and possibly drop, Brandon Ingram in your lineup and Zion. But again, at the same time, when you put them guys in your lineup, you're going to have to sacrifice somewhere. You're going to have to sacrifice that point value. So if you can get, like you said, Lonzo's still sticking around in the 7,000 range. I mean, it's great.
It really
it's great because then it frees you up to possibly add another guard at the bottom of your line, or even get kind of crazy at the utility spot too.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Exactly. I mean, and I'm a bit, I don't like to chase points. That's why I hate, like, there's certain guys I'll go like, wait a minute, he's $5,000. Like, no way. I'm not paying $5,000. You can see values go up. Like Moses Brown over the last 4 or 5 games, right? You're chasing points. You're forcing yourself to buy in. I'm like, I'll stay away. I'll drop back. I'll take Wendell Carter for $1,000 less, who's been blowing up in Orlando, right? So,
right.
They're the comp, but talking about chasing points, I don't even think there's a word to say chasing points when we talk about Russell Westbrook. And I mean, this guy, again, 11-1. I don't care if he was $13,000. I'm buying in. Like, this dude is a constant 60, 70 points a night. He's unstoppable. 4 out of 5 games, triple doubles. It's unbelievable what he's been able to do, whether with Bradley Beal or without Bradley Beal, right? And the funny thing is I think you'll agree with this. Russell is the prototypical fantasy superstar. He's not going to win. No offense, he's not going to win a championship because Russ is all about the stats. He's all about that stuff. He's going to be a ridiculous fantasy performer, but don't expect him to win any rings unless he goes to the Lakers with LeBron one year and they show him a super squad. But I just don't think that happened. So I don't think you have any problems chasing Russ with those points, man.
No, I mean, not at all, because again, it goes back to the moniker of a guy that's stuff in the stat sheet. Again, he might have more times than not, he has his off shooting nights. Let's be honest, he has his off shooting nights. But we also know that he's going to facilitate and he's going to crash the boards. He's one of the few point guards that really goes out there and really crashes the boards to get those points. So I mean, anytime you can get Russell Westbrook, it's hard because you might want to play Bradley Beal, but when Bradley Beal's out, that's an automatic start.
Yeah, exactly. There's no, I mean, there's you just hit that button every time, right? It's absolute 100%. You hit the button. Now, we've seen a lot of trades go down, a lot of interesting trades, and one of them was Orlando, who just kind of decided we're getting rid of everybody. All right, which is shock. But I'll tell you, one of the guys that I had my eye on, and about probably 2 months ago, one of my fantasy vignettes was all about Chuma Okeke, right, from Arizona. So Chuma, to me, was a guy who was getting about 15 minutes. He was like 3,400, and I was like, all right, he's weaning his way into the 20s. I'm like, man, if this boy can get some clock, he is going to be a stud. And what has he been doing right now? Getting 35 minutes a game, and he's hitting 40, 43 points per game in fantasy. He has been an absolute revelation to me. And for 5,700, I don't mind chasing that number because he's been as steady as they come over the last 4 or 5.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the thing, when you have teams that are rebuilding or playing a lot of young players, there's a lot of value for those guys. And Chuma Okeke, the guy that, has brought a ton of value at his price, because you look at that Magic team, they're without Markelle Fultz. Cole Anthony, I think, is set to return, but he's still not back. So that's two guards right there when you're missing offense. There's no Vucevic. There's no Evan Fournier. So somebody's got to score the basketball, right?
Exactly. No Aaron Gordon. Right. Everybody's gone. It's like who's going to shoot the ball, right?
Right. So you need somebody to get you those points, and he's been a guy that's been getting points, and he's been one of the more consistent guys because a lot of people forget that he was a first-round pick. And he had to sit out his first year because of injury, but now you're starting to see that dividend starting to pay off for everybody involved.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, he had that devastating knee injury with Arizona, and it's in the NCAA tournament, which was horrible. But luckily he's been able to come back, and he can shoot the three too. That's the thing people forget, right? So he can shoot the three. So he does a lot, and like you said, Orlando. I mean, there's nobody. They're just they're balling out there with just young boys saying, "Just go," and that's the best thing for DFS, where you can pick up guys like that, like a Nathan Knight from when Clint Capella's out, right? I mean, all of a sudden he blows off Flynn for Houston, who's been blowing up the last two nights, or for Toronto. So I mean, it's like whenever these guys are, these studs are out. That's the time to pray. So, in your opinion, what are maybe a couple guys that you kind of gravitated towards, this season that maybe would say are kind of like a value pick, or guys you just like to put in your lineup on a nightly basis?
Ooh, that's a good one. I would. This is weird because he's not a rookie, but he's a veteran. It's Dwight Howard. Dwight Howard, I think, has been a very good fantasy play and just a DFS play. Again, a guy that's not going to get you points, but when he's rolling, he can get you a smooth double-double. And that's a lot of points right there. So Dwight Howard is definitely on my list. I'm trying to think who else. Norman Powell. I got it on Norman Powell before he blew up.
Yep. Yeah, he's been good for Toronto.
Yeah, and so when I saw Norman Powell and he was available in my fantasy league, I was like, oh yeah, I gotta get him before somebody else takes him. So I think him, Halliburton, Tyrese Halliburton, I think, is another good one. And a lot of people didn't know how he was going to fit with the Kings because there's already De'Aaron Fox and already Buddy Hield. Like, where is he going to fit his way into? But they've made a way where he's, being a consistent, performer and getting the minutes, and that's the key, getting the minutes to be able to produce. And we mentioned this with the Magic. I think any player on the Oklahoma City Thunder right now.
I'm telling you, man,
is a guy to get in your lineup right
except
now.
Al Horford.
Yeah, except Al Horford.
yeah, Al got old real fast. Let me tell you, I have no idea what happened, but Al got old real fast. But speaking of former Sixers, one of my TJ McConnell has been for DFS has been fantastic. Now I know tonight, if people watch a replay, he's going to get a lot of clock tonight. I mean, half the Pacers team's out. Miles Turner's out. Sabonis is out. And everybody's out when it comes to Indiana. So, but here's a guy who's giving you consistently 25 to 30 every night. And you wouldn't even think of it. And that's the thing I think people don't realize. They just look at, I only scored 8 points. Doesn't matter. He also had 7 assists. He also had 5 rebounds. He had 2 steals, right? Nobody. So it's funny. You'll appreciate this. So I would get people sliding my DMs a lot, and I'm like, yo, man, I heard you the other day on the Gambler. You said this guy scored 60. No, he didn't. He only scored 22. I'm like, relax. They're fantasy points. Everything. So I had to preface all my hits listen, I'm talking about fantasy points because they're stat stuffers, and that's who you chase. You want to chase stat stuffers. They're that's my absolute favorite because Zion for a while was a really good $8,000 consistent value. He never hit the 9,000 plateau yet. He was always at 40 to 42, like clockwork. Boom, boom. And I was like, that's how you win, right? You get those guys, you insert them at 8,500, maybe 2 or 3 of those guys, and then you sprinkle all the other guys around, which is like a TJ McConnell. And there's another guy that I mentioned, Derek Favors. He's always in Ben McLemore is another guy who you throw right 3,000, 3,100. That's how you win. That's how you win, because you gotta cash at 300. If you're not hitting 300, you're not going to win an NBA. But you may be able to cash at 250 or 260 and get your money back. But I like what you do. You kind of do like me. It's like, all right, I'm going to spend X amount of dollars on my DFS, and then I'm going to parlay a couple prop bets to kind of get my money back, right? So I see, which is good. Tonight, who'd you have? You had a Chicago Mariners prop bets going on tonight, right?
Yeah, I had I don't think the prop bet converted. I think it was just Monty Grandal, a home run.
Okay.
And that's the thing, and everybody knows the prop bets. Like, don't the thing people see with prop bets, they want to go ahead and like put them all together for a parlay because they see that big dollar amount. But the thing is with those, and it's something I've learned and just listening to other people talk about prop bets, they're so volatile. Because you don't know, like the numbers might say this, but they might not, they might not come through.
I know.
And that's the thing and that's the same thing with DFS. We look at the matchup and we say, wow, such and such has scored, over 20 plus points in fantasy for 4 straight games. And they're playing the Hawks and they're like ranked, 22 against this position. You're like, all right, bet I'm playing them. And then the guy only scores like 10 or he gets hurt and then get upset. Cause then I think what was that game? I think it was the Raptors Warriors game. That was like a DFS
you're thinking points. Yeah, you're thinking points galore, right?
Yeah, and then Fred VanVleet gets hurt. And it was just
that was it. We were talking about that. It's the word. You go on, and whenever you see the damn snowflakes, I want to blow my head through the wall. I'm like, another snowflake. Like I'm like, no, I don't want to see the snowflake. They got to get rid of the snowflake. It kills my whole night. I'm like going into your lineup and seeing 3 snowflakes. I'm like, all right, I'm done. I'm out. I'm just completely done. But Adam, you're too nice, Adam. Adam, listen, I'll tell you what. I wish I was a DFS king. I'm trying, man. I'll tell you what, though, if me and Jovan put our lines together here tonight, we probably would be kings because we always hit 60-70% of our lineup every single night, which is awesome. Again, Adam, thanks for checking in. But you mentioned DFS and how hard it is to play, and Major League Baseball, I think, is even harder. All right. Right. I don't think people understand. And I consistently say that it is always about the pitching. And right. You know that if you pick, you get 2 pitchers and that's it. So if you don't hit on one of them, or actually both of them, you're kind of screwed. Now, what I will say, want to get your opinion on this because I don't look at wins. That's one thing. When I pick my DFS pitchers, I don't care if they win or lose because to me, 4 points is not going to make or break me. I'm looking at their whip and I'm looking at their Ks per 9 because I want to see 2 points per innings pitch. I want to see that, 10 strikeouts because I know even with the guy who gets a no decision gets me 17 to 20. So that's kind of the way I formulate my pitchers. I don't know about you. What do you look for when you talk about pitchers?
I think pitchers, I look, obviously, like you said, I look at who they're playing. I look who playing. I'm like, all right.
Right. Well, yeah, obviously.
Like depending on the lineup, like, all right, this team is like kinda they're not playing well offensively. I think this is a good spot for them. But like you say, you look at the K per 9, you look at the whip, you look at their ERA, you look at how they performed against these teams in the past and see if they, are racking up them strikeouts. And I think I was able to hit on yesterday with a Tyler Glass now, who was like only, I think, played in only 58% of the contest. And then I went with Peralta with the Brewers. And I think he's only rostered like 6% because it was a matchup where it was him and Alize from the Cubs. And it was just like a sleeper matchup where you didn't know like what to expect because both guys were, I think they both of them for their respective teams were competing for the last spot in the rotation. So it's kind of like you don't know what you're going to get from either guy. And Peralta, I think, gave me he was only at 7,600 salary and gave 28 points. And like you said, strikeouts are key. 8 strikeouts for him.
That's huge. And again, I took Stroman. I was thinking, all right, the Phillies eventually have to lose here, which they inevitably did. Right? I didn't get the win from Stroman, but I'm like, but again, like the other night, you mentioned a good point about the ownership. I mean, I'm a big Dustin May guy. I like Dustin May. Here's a kid, 23 years old, pitching for a really good team for the Dodgers. And last year, he showed like 2.57 ERA. This year in the spring, 2.36. The kid's got 70 Ks and 50 innings. I mean, all he does strike, and he's playing against the 5th starter on the other team, which usually is a direct, right? So he only 13% owned the other night, and I think I forget what he dropped me, but he gave me 31. right? He got the win, but again, they're the kind of matchups that you have to look for. And then Rodon from the White Sox, I started. He was at 50% ownership, but he was only 6,700. It gave me 30. Now that night, I was able to cash, but all because of my pitchers. That's with guys giving me a 0 in my lineup. So that's how important the pitching is. I mean, you could get, I say 60. If you can get 50 to 60 points from your 2 starters, then you're going to be in that upper echelon of scoring in Major League Baseball DFS.
Yeah, I would agree, because I'm looking back at my 2 wins yesterday, and that was key. That was definitely key, having
it's huge.
Those 2 starters in my other contest that I won. I had Peralta again. I was just feeling him, like I'm going to take him. And then I went with Clayton Kershaw, who was surprisingly only rostered like 16%.
See, that's huge.
And I was like, all right, they're playing Oakland. Oakland's struggling. They're getting outscored. They're I think going into that game, their deficit. They were losing like by 7 runs a game. I'm like, all right, the offense is struggling. Kershaw struggled in Coors Field, but that's Coors Field. He's going to bounce back against a struggling A's team. And he bounced back.
And see, that's what I always say, and that's what I appreciate about people like yourself and what we do is, a lot of people just kind of throw stuff up at the wall. And listen, hey, I'm not knocking anybody. I just hate when people act like we do that. Like, listen, there is a method behind what we do.
Yeah.
It's like I'm not reading an article saying, yeah, I'm picking that guy. Like, no, man, there's a reason, and you sometimes you got to trust your gut. Sometimes you just can't always go with the national, opinion. You got to say, okay, what am I thinking here? What have I seen? So I think there's a lot of value in baseball considerably, because I like how you can formulate your lineup. Like I've been able, I always give myself a challenge. I want to get as many bats in my lineup with 2 aces. And sometimes I'm taking like a $2,700 second baseman that might be bat 8th, but I'm like, you know what? If he's batting 8th for the Padres, like Kim for the Padres took over for Tatis, and it's like he's in a pretty powerful lineup. So right. So you have to look at those kind of things as well. But talking about Tatis, I didn't see any news. I don't know if you heard anything about. I know he had an MRI today. Hoping it's nothing serious from the other night. But that would be a big blow to San Diego. But Manny Machado, I brought up. Manny Machado versus Bryce Harper effect probably about a couple months ago. And, it's amazing to me to revisit back in 2019 to bring that to us now in 2021 and see where both of these guys went. It's like, okay, you know what? They both actually have been very, very similar, right?
Yes.
Right? They really have. And so in your opinion, if you just took those 2 guys as a whole, because I want to talk about the Angels as well, but who would you rather have on a traditional, not even DFS, if you were drafting and I said you could have Machado or Harper, who you going after for your team for the whole year?
Man, this is another
I'll
good
put you
one.
on the spot, man.
This is good. This is a good one. This is a good one. I would weirdly say Harper, just because of the power in his bat. Like one swing can just change the entire complexion of a game. Like, don't get me wrong, Machado can do the same thing. I mean, we've seen it. Last season, him and Tatis were a dynamic duo in that batting order, and it was like I think they had probably over 30 home runs combined by themselves. So I mean, they were crushing it. But if I got to choose, I'm taking Harper, just because, like I said, that one swing he can do is just lethal. And then we also see he can steal a couple bases here and there when he's not being uber aggressive.
Yeah. So. It's hard to get mad at him. You know what I mean?
No,
he plays hard. I mean, it's like, what do you want the guy to do? The dog? Because listen, you want to talk about dog and just look at Manny Machado. That's the reason why I didn't want Manny here. You know what I mean? But no, I agree. Listen, Bryce plays in my opinion, I would say top 3 lineup in baseball. I mean, the Philadelphia Phillies from 1 to 7. I mean, you have Gene Segura bat 7th, who's a 301 lifetime hitter. That's it. That's unheard of. It's absolutely unheard of. So that lineup is very, very powerful. Now, talking about lineups, there's, every year there's a constant in fantasy baseball that you kind of just gravitate towards. And one of those guys has been Nelson Cruz. Right? It's like, Edwin Encarnacion was that guy for a little while. Now, like Nelson Cruz, again, 3 home runs to start off. Like, this dude never ages. I swear to God. Like, and the reason why I bring him up is because Minnesota, to me, I've been quietly stacking Buxton and Cruz on a consistent basis. And they really listen, Buxton to me. I'll tell you what, he is a stat stuffer when it comes to fantasy baseball. He does all right. He steals base, hits for average, hits for home runs. Now he's got ribbies. I mean, that team, Minnesota is that team, in my opinion, that can sneak up on people in a DFS stack that you're really not looking at. So for me, I don't know if you've played them yet, but Minnesota is one of those stack teams to watch.
Yeah, no, I actually played a couple of Minnesota players today.
Okay,
I think Buxton got me 3. Seven. He got me 7. Then I went Kyle Garlick for like 8 points in my other contest. Again, and that guy, I think he was like 2,000 and some change. So like, again, you just think about how the lineups are constructed. And you say, okay, if Buxton can get on, then who's going to be right behind them to drive them in? If they set the table for Nelson Cruz, then he's going to bring them home. If they can set the table for Max Kepler, he's going to drive them home. So there's always opportunities. And honestly, sometimes you just want guys. I know a lot of people fall in love with the home run, but sometimes you just want guys that can just get on base. Just get on base because there's a lot of points and a lot of values in that.
Oh, without a doubt. And that's how you fill up the stat box. I mean, that's what we were talking about. Like you said, I mean, Buxton gets you a 7. That's because he probably had 1 hit. He scored 2 runs and stole a couple bases. I mean, that's what you're looking at. I mean, you're going to have your JD Martinez's and who's been a very good value as well, under 5,000, killing the ball, right? You're going to have your Mike Trouts and you know what? Speaking of Mike Trout, let's talk about the Angels, because coming into this year, I said that this could possibly be Mike Trout's best year ever. And I honestly didn't know that he only hit the century mark 3 times in his entire career when it comes to RBIs. And I think that just shows that he hasn't been in great lineups throughout his career with the Angels. And this year, I said something's telling me that this is going to be a powerful lineup with, Ohtani, as long as he's back and healthy, which obviously he is now. You have Rendon, you have Trout. Listen, you have Dexter Fowler, who's a really nice people. People forget about Justin Upton. I'll tell you what, everybody forgot about Justin Upton because he had a couple 2 years he was marred with injuries and he was slow. I'll tell you what, they look like a really good team this year.
Yeah, that's the thing. The Angels this year, like you said, just naming all the position players and guys that can hit. I mean, there's no reason why they shouldn't be in contention. But again, it falls on that pitching. What can they get from that rotation? Can Dylan Bundy kind of play at least decent the way he did last season? And what can you get from other guys? What are you going to get from Alex Cobb? How much are you going to depend on Shohei Ohtani to pitch? Because you don't want to probably stretch him, to a 15 starts, 20 starts like you would another pitcher. But you want to hope that every time he does start, I think his rookie year where he won Rookie of the Year, I think he started like 10 games. If you can get 10 starts out of him and get at least 7 or 6 quality starts, you'll take that, because that could be the difference between not making the playoffs and being on the outside of the playoff picture. And that's been the thing with the Angels team. They got the players, they got the offense. It's just can your starters get it done for you? Because they got some bullpen pieces too. Raisel Iglesias, I mean, he blew the game against the Astros, but I think he's a competent closer for him.
I agree. I mean, he did well when he was in Cincinnati, right? It's a great point about Ohtani, because he is going to be the guy you're going to cringe every time he pitches, right? He pitches so hard. He already had the Tommy John. He had the issue. So you're thinking, all right, this dude, I don't want him to blow his arm out. So it's like, let's not overuse him, right? Because he's so valuable. He's so valuable to that lineup, offensively, that you can't have him hurt you that way. So it's a great point. They're going to be fun to watch this year. The Angels are going to be fun to watch. The Blue Jays with the young boys are going to be fun to watch with Bochette, okay, and with Guerrero. I mean, these guys are. It's so fun to watch the next generation of players come in. I mean, I loved it when it was Prince Fielder. I enjoyed it because it was like I grew up on Cecil Fielder, so it's like I get to watch both generations, right? I grew up on Vlad. My man had the biggest gun next to Andre Dawson. I never seen a better arm in the outfield than Vlad Guerrero, who still probably wouldn't wear batting. He was the only dude that wear batting gloves. Everybody forgets about that. He walked up there. He was like, I ain't wearing no batting gloves, right? Yeah, he was he was unbelievable, man. He really was. I don't know if it's because in Philly, like we had to watch him kill us all the time in
Right.
Montreal, right? He was definitely a Philly killer, but yeah, man, it's great to see the evolution. Adam, what's up? What do you say? Who's your go-to guy in fantasy lineup? So, what's know both? So we're on Major League Baseball. Let's just go baseball. So, Jovan, who would you say who's your maybe one or two go-to guys you've been liking so far in this first week?
Go-to guys, you just mentioned him, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. He's played really well. I know a lot of people expected him to have that breakout year last season. It didn't happen,
Yep.
but this season, a lot of people say he put in the work in the all season, lost weight, and he's hitting the ball. Again, not everything has to be a home run. He's hitting that ball around the park, and he's driving in, getting on base. That's all you need. So I like him. I know this ain't a go-to guy, but I mean, he's been a great story to start the season. Akil Badu from the Detroit Tigers. I mean, again, I think I have him in my fantasy line because I was like, all right, it's an early slate of games, and we know him. And when there's early slate in baseball like it is today, there's so many different lineup changes, guys that you expect to start, don't start. So I was like, I think he was like 3,000. I was like, I'm gonna put him in my lineup just to see what he can do. He's going against Maeda, who's a solid player, a solid pitcher, but he's not overwhelmingly good. And I think Badu term gave me like 10 points. I was like, oh, okay. So now he's a guy now I'm going to continue to look forward to possibly using. I know probably a lot of people are going to try to get Nate Lowe in their lineups because he's just been killing it. Castellanos. Yep. I mean, there's a lot of guys that people are going to try to start stacking on.
There is. It's exciting for us because it's like, it gives us so much more flexibility with our lineups. I mean, I love Buxton. I mean, we because of what we already mentioned. And he's a constant in my lineup. I like JD Martinez because he gives me a power number under 5,000. I really, really like him. Evan Longoria, sneaky, right? At 3 home runs already, batting over 300. He's the guy in San Francisco. So, there's a couple, but anybody, I'll tell you this, Adam, anybody on the Dodgers, how's that? Because I don't care if it's Lux, I don't care if it's Turner, right? I don't care. Corey Seager, Mac Muncy. Listen, these guys are the truth. And let me not forget your main Mercedes from the Chicago White Sox. Who? Right. And there's a funny story about that. So it's like exactly what we do. So the other night, 2 nights ago, I was doing a lineup, and I always pick catcher last. I'm like, I know Will Smith, I know Contreras are really good. I'm like, I'm not paying up. I'm going to keep it low. So I had 3,000 left. I'm like, who can I pick? And I'm like, you know what? I want a guy in a good lineup. And I know the White Sox have a really good lineup. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to throw Mercedes in there for $3,000. Gives me 27. Now I'm like, all right. The next night, I throw him in again. Gives me 18. I'm like, and he's still only 3,500. So I'm like, I'm riding this guy until I start chasing again. And that's inevitable.
Yeah, it is. We see it. It doesn't matter if it's regular fantasy or just DFS. The guys' prices will start to rise, and then they're going to slump, and then they're going to come back down to earth, and then that's the time when to snatch them, and then you'll be good to go. So I think he started out the season 8 for 8. I mean,
it's unbelievable.
That's impressive. I mean, you can't. That's unheard of.
It is. It is. There are the stories that we wouldn't, nobody would predict. I mean, you just because you don't know, and baseball is such a long season, man. Yes. You know what I mean? It is so long. It's actually one of my favorites. Obviously we're gonna go football in a minute, and I love. Obviously, that's my love, but baseball. There's so much more analysis that go into what we do in baseball than any other sport. And I think that's why I like it, because it makes me learn a lot more. I wouldn't know half the players in baseball if I didn't play fantasy. And I tell people that all the time, right?
No, it's the truth. You don't, because there's, in football and basketball, these are the set players for each team. These are the set guys. In baseball, probably maybe 1 or 2, 3, 4 or 5 players on each team. The top 2 guys at a rotation, that's it. But then you start seeing these other guys start to pop up out of the woodwork, and you're like, oh, I didn't know about him. So then you start reading up, doing research on him. You start watching their team play a little bit more. And you're like, oh, this guy's actually pretty good. And now I got to start paying attention to him.
That's what I love about it. And that was always my argument back in the day when people would say, I don't like fantasy because it takes away from the game. I'm like, listen, I'm
It
going to be
actually
honest.
enhances the game.
Right. Exactly. I love it. Exactly. That's exactly what it makes us all junior analysts. And honestly, and it makes us grow educationally and analytically in each of these specific games. And it makes us grow with the players too. I mean, listen, I remember, I think it was Peyton Manning. It might have been Peyton Manning was the first person to ever announce the word fantasy football in a press conference. And it was like, because back then it was like a sin.
Right.
Right. And if, oh no, you can't mention fantasy, right? You can't and then it started to get fun because it is fun, right? It is fun. But yeah, you used the perfect word. Enhance is exactly what I would say. It definitely enhances your knowledge of the game. Without a doubt.
100%. 100%. That's what makes it fun because you get to really start watching other things other than your hometown team. Like you can watch the Phillies anytime, but then it's like, oh, I'm going to turn on the White Sox. Oh, the White Sox are on ESPN. I guess I'll watch them. And you're like, oh, that Mercedes guy, he's really good.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, yo, who's that garlic guy again? Oh, yeah, I have him. I know
he
him.
used to be a Philly.
yeah, that's right. Kyle Garlic was a Philly. I forgot about that. He wasn't the bamboo guy, right? Who was the bamboo? That was Miller, right?
Yeah, he's here.
And he's still here now, right? Yeah. So, yeah, you're right. But switching over to football a little bit as we wind down. Obviously, with free agency, a lot of guys moved around and things happened. But I know it wasn't a major move. But Sam Darnold, I think, is a very, very interesting move. Goes to Carolina, and we heard about Carolina possibly wanting to go get a quarterback. Maybe Teddy Bridgewater gets moved. One thing I will say, Teddy, for everything he went through to be able to come back from such a horrific injury,
right?
Right. I mean, my hat goes off to him. I love the guy for that, but I just don't think he can get the ball down the field like that offense what Matt Rule and Joe Brady want to do.
Yeah.
Right? So you bring in a guy like Sam Darnold, who is still in his early 20s. He still hasn't even hit his prime yet. He's kind of in Jets land, was kind of messed up. But what do you think for his future in Carolina? Do you think that he'll eventually become the starter? Do you think they're going to move Bridgewater? Do you think it's going to competition? What do you kind of see playing out there?
I think I saw somewhere they said they're going to allow Bridgewater to seek a trade, and help facilitate that. So I mean, if they can find a trade partner, then yeah, they should probably do it because, like you said, Bridgewater, for all he went through for him to even come back, is just a great story into itself. And even for some of the ways he played last season, he did have some very good games last season. But there was, like you said, there was always something missing because you're like, man. They got Curtis Samuel. They got DJ Moore. They got Robbie Anderson. Like these guys, yeah, we know they can get the ball and they can do their thing run after the catch on the short routes, but can we air it out and get the ball down the field? And that's what Sam Darnold brings, because a lot of people thought that the Panthers might go quarterback in the draft. This is a team that might go quarterback. But they go on the flip side and say, well, we can trade a 6th-round pick this year, a couple of top picks next year, and a guy that we can constantly try to fix. And I mean, if there's any, if they can try to fix them, then there's no, you're on a low. I would say it's like a low risk, high reward trade. If he pans out, then you're in great shape because he's still young and unlike Christian Hackenberg, who had like that one amazing year at Penn State and it completely like dropped off the face of the earth in terms of quarterback. I still think that there is something there with Sam Darnold after his year at USC where it says, I think there's something there. I think that he can be fixed and molded into something. And I think in Carolina, if he gets the opportunity, gets the steps, if he wins the job there, if they do keep Bridgewater, he's got the weapons. There's no excuse now.
I agree with you. I mean, if you look at the train wreck that he was in the Jets with Adam Gase and right, I don't think he could have picked. I obviously didn't pick it himself, but he couldn't have picked a better scenario to be reborn with Matt Rule and Joe Brady. Joe Brady's offense, and we already talked about that last year. We've seen the evolution of that team and how fun it was to watch. But there was something missing. Obviously, McCaffrey gets hurt. So, you're rolling with Mike Davis, who did a really, really good job. But a lot of the guys took a hit because, like you said, you have deep guys like Anderson and DJ Moore, and they weren't getting the ball down the field. So it kind of hurt their stats a little bit. That's why Curtis Samuel made all that money, because the slot receiver was key, right?
Yes.
So I actually love Sam Darnold going to the Jets. I think he will be a sneaky quarterback play coming up because he has had some tremendous between Moore, Anderson, and he doesn't have Samuel anymore who goes to Washington, which I love that move, by the way, because I love Curtis Samuel. I think he just turned himself into a top 15 receiver with that move. But I think they're going to go receiver in this draft. I think they're going to get Darnold a weapon, whether it be a Waddle or something like that. Maybe even if it's Devonta Smith falls, somebody's going to fall because it's going to go so quarterback heavy. And I think they know that. And I think they're like, all right, we'll get him a weapon. And, Christian McCaffrey comes back. I actually like his outlook. I don't know about you.
Yeah, no, when you put it like that, unlike other teams where they have like 3 good wide receivers, they don't know how to kind of function. They know how to function and move those pieces around. Like you said, Curtis Samuel, they was using him not only as the wide receiver, but they also used him to have like part running back because they were like, this guy's a playmaker. We got to get the ball in his hands by any means necessary. So I think with that being said, if Jalen Waddle falls to them, how about Kyle Pitts?
That's a great. I was just thinking that. You're absolutely right.
Because the Panthers do need to upgrade at tight end. Ian Thomas is good, but we know he's not tight end 1 fantasy value.
He's number 2.
Yes, he's number 2. On a good day, you might get something out of him. But on your weekly, you're not going to play him.
No, not at all. He's a streamer for sure.
So if you get Curtis Sam, you get a wide receiver there in the first round, or even there's some good ones in the second round. Just give him more weapons because we've seen this offense. It's a very quarterback friendly offense where it's just airing it out, get the ball to these guys, and just let them go to work.
Yeah, you make a good point about the tight end because let's face it, they lived with Greg Olsen for years, right? And Greg Olsen was fantastic. Greg Olsen was my guy. I'm in this unique fantasy traditional league, and we start 5 offensive players, and it's not a regular like 2 running back, 2 receiver. It's the only rule is you can't start any more than 3 running backs. So you can start 5 wide, you can start 3 tight ends. So Greg Olsen was my pick every single year as my 5th guy because everybody was stretching. I'm like, Greg's going to get me 10 to 15 every week. Yep. I don't even care. Just give me 10, Greg. And he got me 10, 5 for 50, 5 for 50 every single week. So that's a good point because he's no longer there. I mean, can you imagine if they get him Kyle Pitts and they get a receiver in the second round? I mean, that really makes Sam Darnold look really juicy out there in Carolina.
I mean, it would be the smart thing to go after offense because they addressed the defense so heavily last year in the draft, getting Jeremy Chin, getting Troy Pride Jr., getting Derek Brown in the defensive line. This is the time now with a heavy wide receiver class and a pretty solid tight end class where you could, like you say, give the quarterback what he wants and what he needs to succeed because it's a passing league. We see it.
Oh yeah, without a doubt, and they basically have a rebuilt offensive line as well. I mean, they protected Teddy pretty well last year too. So, and that's why Mike Davis was able to have the amount of success that he had once McCaffrey got hurt. Now on the flip side, we look at the New York Jet level here, and obviously they're going to go quarterback. We're a rookie quarterback, but this is going to have some fallback in fantasy because. They just signed Corey Davis, Corey Davis is everybody's darling because to me, he was so inconsistent. I didn't touch him a lot. It was like, there's good games and bad games. You never know, but he is talented. But Jamison Crowder was a tremendous, consistent slot receiver in fantasy. All year long when he was healthy. He was consistently 6 for 80 and a touchdown, even double touchdowns. So when you look at the Jets now, I think it's almost obvious that you have to drop both of the receivers down because, with a rookie quarterback, because I don't even know who the backup is out there in Jets land. I don't even know if they have one right now because Flacco's here, right? So I don't know what they do. Maybe do they bring Fitzmagic back? Or no, Fitzmagic's in Washington, right? So, I mean, I don't even know what they would do, but I'm guessing that those guys do take a hit, right?
Yeah, I think the wide receivers take a hit, and whoever's running back is going to go up.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you look at what they did in San Francisco, it was a team where they had a lot of running backs. There was times where it was Raheem Mostert going off, or it was the other guy, Jeff. What's his name?
Jeff Wilson.
Yeah, Jeff Wilson was going off, and I think for the Jets to have some success, they're going to have to run the ball. They're going to have to lean on the running game just a little bit more. So, like you said, those guys are going to take a hit because it's hard to be a rookie quarterback if your name's not Justin Herbert. Like, if you're not Justin Herbert, it's going to be hard.
Ooh, man, Justin Herbert. So, that's a good point because we're at like the 45-minute mark, and I said I'd like to go around 45. It's like a great organic conversation. Let me end on this. I'm gonna throw this at you while we're still gonna stay on football because I'm the nuts guy in the sense that I go against the grain when we talk about who goes number one overall. Now, I understand we haven't even had an NFL draft yet, but right now, who is Jovan taking number one overall in a traditional fantasy football draft? Because I tell you, after you tell me yours, you're probably not going to expect who I'm taking because I have a little different basis on that guy. So I'm going to put you on the spot right now. That's why I call this the heat ratio. Fantasy Firebox. You're on the Firebox right now. Clock's running down. You got 1:30. Who's your number one fantasy pick right now on April 7th?
Oh man, this is tough. This is tough.
It goes so many different directions too, man.
Right, because you don't want to take quarterback number one, even though it's tempting. You don't want to do that.
It is tempting.
There's a lot of great wide receivers. I mean, running backs are like a dime a dozen.
I know it's tough,
man.
But, yeah, I mean, and you got a lot of injuries up there too. A lot of those guys, and even running backs or guys coming off of injuries.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to think off the cuff, maybe Devontae Adams.
I love you, man. That's my man. That's exactly, yep. It's funny, and the reason why I laugh is because we think along the same wavelengths. Because for me, it's consistency, right? And you can look at Devontae Adams, and I've said this now. Last year, I could have not foreseen that Michael Thomas would have had the year that he did.
Right.
Last year, I was in all Michael Thomas. I was like, you're crazy. I'm like, listen, do the math, man. I'm looking at points per game average week to week. I don't want 30 and 10, 25 and 8. I want because Devontae Adams was 27.8. He had the best fantasy statistical season since Randy friggin' Moss, right? So, and that team has not changed. They re-signed Aaron Jones. They still have Aaron Rodgers, right? They're only going to get stronger again next year. And listen, if you look at him, and I'm sure you have, I have, other people have, he's virtually unstoppable. The amount of routes that he runs where he's absolutely untouched is more than any wide receiver in the NFL.
Yeah, he's Aaron Rodgers' go-to, and he's one of the. I think I would say he's one of the best wide receivers in the league that nobody talks about because he doesn't do the flashy things. He doesn't have the flashy speed. He's just a guy that gets it done. And the streak that he was on last season, it was just insane. Every time he turned on the game, he had a touchdown.
I'll tell you, man, he was in my DFS lineup. I didn't care. I paid for him every week. Give me him. I don't care because I knew he was going to score. It was inevitable, right? And you turn around, it was like Devontae Adams. It's like, wow. And I mean, I went in, a lot of people thinking it was D-Hop. It was like DeAndre Hopkins, the best wide receiver in the game. How did they trade him, right? We're Houston to Arizona. But Devontae was like, nah, man, this is me. I'm the number one guy. So I'll be honest with you. I'm surprised they signed Aaron Jones. I thought he was absolutely gone. I'm shocked. So they're cooking something up there. And, I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to fall that far back. I know he's 36. Look, Tom Brady's 40 freaking 2, just won a damn Super Bowl, right? I mean, come on. I mean, Aaron Rodgers can play a couple more years. I mean, as long as the guy doesn't get hit or hurt, he'll be good to go. But I love Devontae, man. He's fun to watch. He really is.
It's the perfect pick. I mean, that, like you said, that offense just keeps on changing and they just keep on revolutionizing. The tight end became a major factor for him last year. Nobody thought Robert Tonyan was going to become a top 10 play every week. Wow, and have double-digit touchdowns, and he's now become that viable weapon because they don't have a solid number 2 guy. So now it was like, okay, if you wanted to cover Aaron Jones out in the backfield or coming in the flat, all right, that's cool. We're just going to throw it to the tight end because you're going to double team Devontae Adams. So either he's going to be open or Lazard's going to be open or Valdez Scanton's going to be open. So pick your poison.
Yeah, you're right. You bring up a great point about Tanya. I forgot all about him. And he came out of nowhere. It was like, whoa, you know what I mean? All of a sudden. And again, the tight end position, you think about Green Bay, I mean, God, I go back to maybe Bubba Franks? I mean, like when you think about right? I mean, maybe Bubba Franks was their best fantasy tight end they ever had. They really haven't had much because they always had the guys on the outside like Driver and Jennings and Sterling Sharp, right? So that's a good point. Tanya will be up there on those fantasy lists as well. And speaking of tight ends, I thought it was intriguing to see what the Patriots did with Janu Smith and Hunter Henry, right? So I mean that's a really nice 1-2 punch out there for Cam Newton.
Yeah, I mean, the Patriots doing what they do best. They knew they had success running the 2 tight end sets many years, and they're going back to the well, and they got 2 tight ends that are fairly young that can really give defenses problem in the middle of the field and also be red zone threats. And if your tight ends can give you touchdowns in the red zone, your money every time.
Easy. And then you have, not to mention, a 6'7" quarterback, 240 pounds that don't mind that sneak it in with the best of them, right?
Exactly.
So it's like, how do you even? So Bill Belichick was like, "Yo, last year, mirage." He seen Brady hold the trophy off. He's like, "Nah, no more. I'm back. I'm coming back, man." For real. But Jovan, man, listen, we're gonna end on that. I really appreciate you jumping on. Let everybody know where they can find you, what you got coming up, what you got cooking. Let the audience know, man.
Yeah, so again, appreciate you for having me on. It's really been a good one. It's been fun. You can follow me on Twitter at Jovan10. You can check me out on dknation.draftkings.com. Doing a lot of baseball stuff right now since baseball is heavy. So usually you'll see from me you'll see some money line picks, which we know in baseball doesn't have that much value because it's so juiced sometimes. But we'll have money line picks. We'll have obviously some prop bets as well. And we're gonna, we do a lot. We do that on the site too. We have a lot of NBA content up there, DFS stuff, NBA DFS, MLB DFS. There's a lot of stuff right there. So DraftKings, dknation.draftkings.com is where you need to go.
I'm with you there. They're always my go-to. So always read your stuff. We go back and forth, man. You've hit some picks for me. I know we've been hitting picks together, which has been great. And again, Jovan, it's been wonderful. Hopefully, we'll get you on again. Maybe next week. Maybe we'll talk. See if you're available. I think this has been fun. It's been organic. Had a blast
for sure.
I'd love to chalk it up again. We could talk about our wins and losses for the entire week and see if we're in the green or we're in the red. Who knows? But as always, like I said, everybody for joining, Tony Jigsaw Cotillo, Jovan Alfrod from DK Nation, Fantasy Firebox, Fox Sports The Gambler, iHeartRadio, Heat Radio Sports Network. Follow us everywhere. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll catch you next week.